The morning light flickered across the cracked pavement of the parking lot, just as Officer Daniels slammed Mr. Harold's arm against his battered old pickup truck. One moment, he had been helping a young man carry a box of supplies, the next, he was being yanked back like a hardened criminal. No warning, no respect, just a quick, snarling accusation about suspicious behavior. His heart pounded with equal parts anger and disbelief as he clutched his worn baseball cap, ignoring the sharp pain shooting up his shoulder. If only this officer realized who he was humiliating in front of the whole neighborhood. 3 hours earlier, Harold Jefferson, known around town as Mr. H, was a fixture of the community. At 72, his tall frame carried the weight of a lifetime of hard work, but his spirit remained unbroken. Harold's kind eyes and deep, resonant laugh were familiar to anyone who had spent more than a week in Pinewood. This morning, he had loaded up his truck to deliver groceries to a disabled neighbor on Elm Street. The sun had barely risen when he parked behind the hardware store, intending to grab some extra nails for his side project, building a ramp for another elderly resident down the block. The faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee from a cafe down the street teased his senses. He thought about grabbing a quick cup before heading out. Just as he was stepping out of his truck, Harold noticed a young man struggling with a large box near the loading dock. Without hesitation, he offered to help, grabbing one side of the box and easing it into the man's van. His calm, steady presence immediately put the young man at ease. "Thank you, Mr. H," the man said, shaking his head. "I don't know how I'd manage without folks like you around here." Harold chuckled. "No trouble at all. We look out for each other around here." As he stepped back toward his truck, the sound of screeching tires broke the quiet. A police cruiser roared into the lot, slamming to a stop a few feet from Harold's truck. A tall, broad-shouldered officer stepped out, his uniform crisp but his expression hard. The shiny nameplate read, "Daniels." Without so much as a greeting, he barked, "Hey, you. Hands where I can see them." Harold froze, startled by the sudden hostility. For a moment, he thought the officer might be addressing someone else, but Daniels was looking straight at him, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. The young man Harold had just helped quickly disappeared around the corner, his steps hurried and nervous. "Sir, is there a problem?" Harold asked, his voice calm but tinged with confusion. He raised his hands slightly, his cap still clutched in one of them. Daniel's scowl deepened. "What are you doing here? This area's had reports of theft. Looks like you're up to no good." Harold blinked, stunned. "I'm just helping out, that's all." "Helping out?" Daniels sneered. "That's a new one. Mind if I take a look in your truck?" Before Harold could respond, Daniels' partner, a younger officer with a tense expression, approached the vehicle. "Check the glove compartment," Daniels instructed, ignoring Harold's attempts to interject. Harold's jaw tightened. "You can't just go digging through my things without a warrant," he said, his voice steady but firm. Daniels scoffed. "Don't get smart with me, old man." A small crowd began to gather. Patrons from the cafe watched through the windows, their faces a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. One older woman near the entrance muttered, "That's Harold. He's always helping folks out." But no one stepped forward. Daniels grabbed Harold's arm and pulled him away from the truck, muttering something about random vehicle checks. Harold's heart raced. He had lived in Pinewood his entire life and had never been treated like this. His voice trembled slightly as he said, "This is my truck. It's registered, insured, and legal. There's no reason for this." Daniels didn't respond. Instead, he yanked Harold's arm higher, causing him to wince. "Step back," he ordered, shoving him toward the hood of the cruiser. Humiliation washed over Harold as he felt the crowd's eyes on him. He was no stranger to hardship, but this, being treated like a criminal in broad daylight, was a new kind of pain. His shoulders ached, but he forced himself to stand tall, refusing to let the officer see his discomfort. "Sir," Harold began, his tone careful, "I've done nothing wrong." "This isn't right." Daniels smirked. "We'll see about that." Just as the officer's partner began rifling through the glove compartment, a voice called out from the edge of the lot. "Hey, what's going on here?" All heads turned to see Pastor Ray, a well-known figure in the community, striding toward them. His voice carried the kind of authority that made people listen. "That's Mr. Harold Jefferson," Pastor Ray said, his tone firm. "What's the meaning of this?" Daniels hesitated, his grip on Harold's arm loosening slightly. "We're conducting an investigation," he said, his tone defensive. "There's been suspicious activity reported in the area." "Suspicious activity?" Pastor Ray's brow furrowed. "Helping someone carry a box is suspicious now?" He gestured toward the growing crowd. "This man has done more for this town than most of us combined. If you're accusing him of something, you'd better have proof." The tension in the air was palpable. Daniel's partner shifted uncomfortably, glancing between the crowd and Harold. "We're just doing our job," Daniels said, though his earlier confidence had waned. Harold took a deep breath, his voice steady but resolute. "Your job isn't to harass innocent people. I've spent my life helping this community, and I won't stand here and let you treat me like I'm less than a man." The crowd murmured in agreement. A few people began recording the scene on their phones. The young man Harold had helped earlier stepped forward, his voice shaking but determined. "He was helping me," he said. "That's all. He didn't do anything wrong." Daniel's face reddened. "We're done here," he muttered, stepping back. His partner quickly followed, closing the truck's door without another word. Harold straightened his shoulders, wincing slightly as he adjusted his arm. He looked Daniels in the eye. "You need to think about how you treat people because next time, it might not end like this." Daniels didn't respond. He and his partner climbed back into the cruiser and drove off without so much as an apology. As the crowd began to disperse, Pastor Ray placed a reassuring hand on Harold's shoulder. "You handled that with grace," he said, "but it shouldn't have happened in the first place." Harold nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's not just about me. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." By the time he got back into his truck, Harold's mind was already working. He knew he couldn't let this go. He had spent decades teaching young people about fairness and integrity, and now it was time to take a stand. As Harold drove down Main Street, his thoughts drifted to his late wife, Lorraine. She had always believed in standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. He could almost hear her voice urging him to be strong. The memory brought a faint smile to his face, but it was quickly replaced by a steely determination. When he reached his neighbor's house, he handed over the groceries with a kind word and a promise to check in later. Then, he drove straight to City Hall. Harold had always avoided politics, preferring to work quietly in his community, but this incident was too big to ignore. He asked to speak with the mayor, a young woman named Clara Morales, who had been elected on a platform of justice and transparency. Mayor Morales listened intently as Harold recounted the events of the morning, her expression shifting from shock to anger to resolve. "Mr. Jefferson, this is unacceptable," she said. "I'll make sure this is investigated thoroughly. No one in our town should be treated this way." Harold nodded, grateful for her support but knowing that change wouldn't come easily. "Thank you, Mayor," he said, "but this isn't just about me. It's about how we treat each other as a community." Over the next few weeks, Harold became a reluctant leader in a growing movement for accountability in Pinewood. He spoke at town meetings, shared his story with local reporters, and encouraged others to come forward with their own experiences. His quiet strength and unwavering commitment inspired people from all walks of life to stand together. The incident in the parking lot became a turning point for Pinewood. Policies were reviewed, officers were retrained, and the community began to rebuild trust. Harold's name became synonymous with integrity and resilience. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset over the town he loved, Harold felt a deep sense of peace. He hadn't sought out this role, but he knew it was exactly where he needed to be. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to relax, knowing that the seeds of change had been planted and that the future of Pinewood was brighter because of it.